Our lives are laid out on a road of bumps, turns, struggles, and more. How do we respond? How do we endure adversity for learning and growth? I'm Aubrey Johnson, and we'll explore these questions and more on the road to rediscovery. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Road to Rediscovery. I'm your host, Aubrey Johnson. The Road to Rediscovery is about reflecting on life lessons to learn and grow from them, and of course, level it up and help uplift others who are struggling through dark times. Now, as a quick reminder, the hard copy of Relentless, Empowering Stories of Overcoming Adversity. This book is now available in hard copy form, okay? And I got to tell you, I had a blast, an absolute blast being the co-author of this. If you want stories of motivation, inspiration, and overcoming some serious struggles, this book is for you. This gives you a glimpse into a piece of my journey, a piece of my struggle, as well as my 19 colleagues who co-authored this as well. The book is available on Amazon for $22. However, you can shoot me an email at roadtorediscoverypodcast@gmail.com. That's roadtorediscoverypodcast@gmail.com and get an autographed version of this book by yours truly at a discounted price. So shoot us an email. Either way, you will be totally moved by these stories, and we'll make it happen. All right, fantastic. So my special guest is a writer, speaker, pianist, general aviation pilot, and more. Born with a bilateral cleft lip and palate, she's endured significant emotional challenges. She's learned the lessons behind these challenges, and fast forward to now, she is the founder of the Dragonfly Paradigm, a cleft resilience community that she's built to share strategies and tools for building and maintaining emotional resilience, not only for the cleft-affected individuals, but for parents and caregivers of the cleft-affected children as well. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure. Please help me welcome Vickie Stolle to the show. Vickie, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Aubrey. I appreciate the opportunity. And I love the introduction, but also I want to hear more about that book and how can I get in the next edition? That sounds like fun.
Yeah, talk about a lot of fun. It actually was, Vickie, and I am more than happy to share that information with you and get you in the mix of it because there will be a second anthology that will be coming out soon. So you and I will remain in touch. Okay. I have a feeling that we're kindred spirits and we have a story to share of overcoming adversity. So I definitely want to bring you in the fold from there. All right. Well, thank you. We're excited to have you on the show. I can't wait for us to dig into this great conversation and just share a glimpse into some of your challenges that you've had, right? And how the support system around you and how the resilience within you help transform you to what you're doing today and helping others. So for those not familiar with the bilateral cleft lip, Vickie, for the listeners' benefit, if you don't mind, can you start us off with a brief description on what it is, known causes, and anything else that we should know about it?
Sure, definitely. Yeah. So, like you said in the intro, I was born with what's called a bilateral cleft lip and palate, and there's many variations. You can have a cleft lip, you can have a cleft palate, and I guess maybe I should just explain what a cleft is really just essentially a gap. So around 4 to 6 weeks, maybe 4 to 8 weeks is kind of when the facial features are forming in utero. And so when a baby develops a cleft, it just means that it didn't come all the way together. And so, like I said, you can have just a cleft lip, you can have just a cleft palate, you can have both. You can also have what's called a unilateral cleft which means just one opening. And that can be, again, lip or palate, or you can have the two openings, bilateral, which is what I had. I had two openings in the lip, two openings in the palate that then, required correction after I was born. when it comes to causes, it's really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Very difficult to know really what it is.
Mm-hmm.
There was no instance of it in my family at all. And so primarily what many scholars, scientists, doctors believe is that it's primarily environmental. However, once it is in the family, it then can be passed down. I do have a daughter. She's 10. She was not born with a cleft of any kind.
Okay.
However, it could mean, that maybe if she decides to have children, that's a possibility just because there is family history. Of course, you have to take in both partners, DNA and all
Right.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of just sort of the gist of it. Um, there just is a lot more research that needs to be done. But I think one of the challenges is because it happens so early on in the
Yeah.
pregnancy, it's really difficult to do any kind of, testing or anything like that because it frankly really isn't even detected around 20 weeks when they do that
Mm-hmm.
ultrasound. Or
Mm-hmm.
even in my case, it was a surprise to my parents. So they didn't know ahead of time. So
Right. I see. I see. Well, thank you for clarifying that for us. And again, I just think that's a solid foundation for us to springboard into this conversation, right?
sure.
So, very, very appreciative of that. So, can you paint us a picture of your environment as a youth and how your parents navigated and guided you through being a youth with the cleft lip and palate bilateral?
Sure, yeah. Well, so I was born in '77, so kind of grew up,
Okay.
the '70s and '80s, and
Mhm.
I lucked out because I had really wonderful parents. I had a, mother and father that provided a very safe home for me. Were
Mhm.
very loving. I was the only child, but the other thing really was that my mom was the quintessential mama bear. So when it
Yeah.
came to advocating for me, getting the care I needed, certainly on the medical side of things, she
Mhm.
was all about that. She was making it happen to get whatever I needed in order to thrive. But when,
Nice.
and growing up, I grew up in a very small town. I think at the
Mhm.
time that I graduated high school, it was only around 2,000 people. So my entire high school was only 500 kids. Um,
Wow.
and so there was kind of, a blessing and a curse with that.
Yeah.
Being in a small town, I never saw anybody else that looked like me. So
Right.
feeling alone, feeling isolated, feeling othered was pretty common early on. But then
Mhm.
on the flip side of that, I graduated high school with many of the kids I was in kindergarten with. And so in a way, like the novelty of me wore off eventually, right? And
Right.
so
Right.
I was able to kind of find a nice, I have a great group of friends in high school. And so I really didn't have like as much kind of, ostracizing later as I did when I was younger, because again, it was just, had been there, for 12
Right.
years, and
Yeah.
so it was kind of, it was good and bad in that, because then when I went to college, it was like leaving my tiny little safe community to the University of Oregon. And it was like, yeah, that kind of was a whole other story we can go down
Oh,
about
no.
that change. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm sure. And to some degree, without going into a whole new story with Oregon, which one day you and I will,
okay.
I hope. Uh, when you started to go to Oregon, did it feel like the novelty started all over again
Yeah,
to
but
some degree?
what's interesting, Aubrey, is that at the time, I mean, I felt like I was walking around with just a big sign, like, look at
Yeah.
me, look at this girl with the cleft, look at
Yeah.
this girl with the face that's different than everybody else. But
Mm.
with the benefit of hindsight,
Mhm.
when I can look back, that just wasn't the case. At a campus with, I don't know, 10,000 students, it was just another kid, but I
Mhm.
had a
Mhm.
lot to do with how I was projecting and carrying myself
Yeah.
that kind of informed then my environment, right? I
Yeah.
still met people, I was involved in kind of, some of those freshman orientation groups and, did meet a few people, but it was really
Right.
difficult more on my, myself versus my environment. And I think that had a lot to do with the fact that growing up, I never really talked about my cleft. It
Mhm.
became a thing where I don't want to be, I'm in a small town and I am a kid with a face that's different than everybody else, but I don't want to have to talk about it all the time. And so I would
Right.
start putting it down, shoving it down, just not
Yeah.
acknowledging it. But eventually that didn't serve me very much. And it kind of informed some of the, ways that I behaved and coped with some of the, emotional stress that I was under. So yeah, it was a big change.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I I know I personally would feel kind of conflicted, right? And the reason why I say that is because let's say in the small town, in the high school years, right? Um, we get to the age to where we may consider, I don't know, naturally I would, I'm speaking just about myself, I would have this defensive nature,
Hmm.
if people would ask or inquire, about this, what is it, where it came from, and so forth. And then I don't know if I stop and think about it. Um, if I'm a if I can be a good judge of character and a good judge of determining where someone is coming from
Hmm.
when they approach me with a question or a comment, you know, um, there's ridicule and then there's genuine, authentic curiosity,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
And so, how can I discern between the two to where I could actually open up and speak about it,
Hmm.
and so I can only say that I would be I would be going through high school hoping and praying that I would have that type of intelligence to discern, um, and try to not just hair trigger, be defensive, but again, I don't have it, and so I could. It's easy for me to say that, but did you feel defensive in some cases, or anything like that?
Yeah, well, definitely. So again, just kind of context in the, 70s and 80s and all of that, we
Yeah.
certainly weren't talking about emotional health like we do now, right?
No. Very true.
And well, my parents did their best. My mom was, a very intelligent woman who was well aware of the importance of my emotional, health and well-being. But
Mhm.
she was doing the best she could with whatever resources and, information she had at that time, which really,
Sure.
wasn't a lot. And like I
Mhm.
said, thankfully, we had a very close family, very loving, supportive. I could really talk to her about anything, but it was just a different time. So
Yeah.
I for sure, especially as I got into high school, I had a pretty good chip on my shoulder, and
Yeah.
I would react no matter how anybody because it got to the point where I was tired of being asked what happened to your face, right?
Understood. Okay. Yeah.
I would get that kind of where I could see just by the
Mhm.
look on somebody's face
Mhm. Mhm.
what they were going to come at me with, and I would, yeah, come back, at a
Yeah.
at a level 100, and I could really, cut people off at the knees with my words, and I got pretty good
Sure.
at that.
Mhm.
However, there came a time where that really wasn't a skill that I needed to get any better at. I needed to actually undo a lot of that
Yeah.
defensiveness, come at them hard so that they would leave me alone.
Yeah.
Uh, but I was just to the point where I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to be
Right.
known only for that. And honestly, like, why am I going to talk to somebody about something so personal if I don't even know them? Like, I didn't understand
Right.
why people couldn't put the shoe on the other foot and be like, well, would I want someone walking up to me, asking me something so personal, and it's something I can't change either, It's
Yeah.
not like
Yeah.
shoes untied, or my
Right.
toss
Right.
inside out, It's like, it's
Yeah.
my face, and there's really nothing I can do about it, and so, yeah, definitely kind of those early years, even
Mhm.
if I'm honest, well into my 20s, I had a pretty good chip on my shoulder about it. But as I got
Yeah.
older, and certainly once I became a parent, that completely changed for the better,
Uh,
I think.
for the better. No, that's great. That's awesome. And I know you've had some time to reflect, and of course, as we get older, we kind of reconsider things. Um, Wanted to know. Uh, it sounds as if with the strong support system you had, with your parents, and they were very engaged, and your mom, she made it a priority
Yeah.
for your happiness, for your self esteem, and that you had some assurance in who you are and where you come from. So even with this condition or with the cleft lip, you you were pretty secure in who you are and capable, and you knew what you were capable of as far as your talents and what you can do and so forth, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they,
Okay.
they did a nice job helping me along with that, and a
Yeah.
lot of the work that I do, I talk about kind of these 9 building blocks that they
Hmm.
really use with me to help me become, strong and resilient and
Yeah.
confident and able just to, manage life in that way. And one of the things that
Yes.
they did was, they exposed me to all kinds of things, and
Hmm.
they didn't, like, let their fear, as well as they didn't allow me to let my fear hold me back from living life.
Yes.
We would be going out to dinner when I was 5, 6 years old, and
Yeah.
visibly, has had work done, and
Hmm.
just going to different things, going to symphonies, going to plays, going to,
Right.
all different places, just
Yeah.
getting out, just living life and
Yeah.
exposing me to different things, and not just staying kind of in the small town that we lived in all the time because they were afraid to take me out, you know, thinking about what could be said at them or at me. It was like, here she is. She's going to,
Yes.
be a strong, confident individual and not hide from life. She's going to do her best to live life. And they led by example, which is really the key. It's one thing to tell your
Yes.
kids to do something, but they're always watching. They want to see what we do. And so
Yeah.
they did that, and we would, they would take me all over the place. So I really look back on that as a benefit, as a plus, because
Hmm.
I ended up not being afraid to try things, to go new places. I may have been
Yeah.
nervous, may have been scared, of course,
Yeah.
but I had a safe place to return to, if things didn't go well, or if
Hmm.
they did, sharing the positive and the negative. It was They did their best to create kind of our home was the safe place, and nobody was coming into there, with any negative intention. Otherwise, my mom
Right.
would have thrown them out on their ear. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so your resilience, even though you may have a momentary bit of nervousness or about going out somewhere new, somewhere different, even as an adult, that had to come from somewhere, right? And that's the great example your parents set
yeah,
for you by taking you out different places, plays, restaurants, like you said.
yeah,
We can't live under a rock, right? It's almost like as if, to me, travel is one of the true senses to know that we're living, right? The ability to travel, just to me, travel is a huge deal.
yeah,
And with all the things happening in the world, as long as we're reasonable about our travel choices, we can't live under a rock and say, "Oh, no, I'm not traveling ever again because of how crazy it is out in the world." You know,
right.
you
Yeah,
have to live,
yeah, yeah, and I think
Yeah,
too, there's not much better education than travel, but not even talking about going, to another country, but even
yeah,
just going from your small little town to the next, bigger town. My daughter just went through
absolutely.
something not that long ago where she kind of, is playful with what she wears, and she likes to be expressive, and we got her this really cute, like, little, like, I mean, it's like the same color pink as my sweater, little wig, right? Little
Yeah,
bob.
yeah.
So
Uh-huh.
cute, She wanted to
Yeah.
wear it to school. I'm like, okay, well,
Mhm.
she comes out from school not wearing it because, even her friends and other kids were making fun of her, right? Like,
Oh,
why are you
okay.
wearing that? It's so dumb,
Right.
all the things.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
so she was really, defeated, but I think it was about maybe a week later, we had gotten tickets to go see the Portland Thorns, which is the female Portland soccer club here in
Yeah.
Portland. And
Mhm.
she's like, I kind of want to wear my wig, but I'm a little nervous. And I'm like, wear it. I said, Portland is a big city compared to
Yeah.
where we live. I said,
Right, right.
nobody's going to even bat an eye, at it.
Yeah,
And we
yeah.
get there, and unbeknownst to us, I mean, we hadn't really been following it, but like their team colors are this color. And so she's wearing the wig, and everybody's like, your wig is awesome, just all
Yeah,
this kind of support and love. And she was just beaming. And I was like, Olivia, look, like, this is kind of, what it takes. You got to have that perspective of, maybe in this tiny little spot right now, it's not working, but just broaden it a little bit, and it won't
yeah.
feel so intense. It won't feel so like, oh, I'm being so different, where there's all kinds of people with different colored hair, and so, yeah,
Absolutely. My goodness. Vickie, I love it.
yeah.
What a tremendous demonstration and example for your daughter to take in. And she's at the center experiencing both sides of this, right? What
Yeah,
happens in the smaller space or smaller town with her friends at school, and what happens at the women's soccer tournament
yeah,
or game.
yeah.
So yeah, that's and to experience that firsthand,
Hmm.
I'm sure the light bulb comes on,
Yeah,
and she's empowered by that, right? And
yeah.
yeah, that's tremendous. And it's funny you brought that up because I wanted to kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about, oh my goodness, these societal norms and expectations, right?
How much
So
time you got? Do we have
I
how
know, right? How much time we have here? Yeah. So I'm gonna skinny it down a little bit for us, okay? Because we could talk about this all night.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm gonna skinny this down a little bit. These societal norms and expectations, I mean, and a lot of these have evolved over the years. There are some that have been remained constant. There are some that have kind of evolved because generationally, okay, yeah, generationally we evolve, right? So there could be some changes in some of these norms and expectations, but especially the physical appearance. Okay, when it comes to these norms and expectations, they can be so terribly influential, right?
Mhm,
And they can really take a hit on anyone's self-esteem. Now, I'm assuming, like you said, you were born in '77.
mhm,
Social media didn't exist in your childhood. Um, I was born in '68. Growing up, I didn't have social media either.
mhm.
But has social media created an added dynamic for not just the cleft lip youth, but anyone with a physical difference?
Yeah, I think again there's pluses and minuses,
Yeah.
so like you said, I was born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s. I mean, I was around for the birth of the internet. That's how old I am.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
and so I've seen it evolve, of course, but
Hmm.
I on one hand, I am glad it wasn't around when I was young, right? I
Yes.
think it's really kind of really done work to turn everybody like look, here, like just
Yeah.
look at me, how am I being perceived? And
Hmm.
then even more so taking value from that, right? Like they think that
Yes.
the only way that they're worthy enough is by likes, all, that kind of stuff, which is really frustrating.
Yeah.
However, on the other side of it, especially for someone with a visible difference, and I think this kind of goes for any marginalized community, um, that growing up the way that I did feel very isolated and alone so often.
Yeah.
And with the birth of social media, just by a click on my computer, I have found various cleft community groups that have 11,000, 15,000 people in them that are just like me. You know,
Amazing.
and people think that cleft really isn't that common, but it is. It's 1 in 700 babies are born with a cleft of some kind, whether that
Mm.
be lip, palate, or both.
Right. Right.
And so we are out there, but um, you know, accessing kind of the positive side of that to engage with a community who truly understands what that experience is like. I'm just so thankful for the younger people that are coming up now that can get a little bit more interaction with groups that have that. But of course, like what you're were bringing up in the beginning of this, it is difficult because with social media, certainly with dating, certainly with any kind of developing relationships with people,
Hmm.
that's just the way it works now. It's all about your profile picture and what you're doing. And I have
Yeah.
some colleagues who are in their late 20s who are actively on the dating apps and all that kind of stuff, and they are cleft affected, and they said it's just so difficult to,
Mm.
it's not that they can't, connect with somebody, but trying
Yeah.
to go beyond the physical, right?
Right.
And when I was growing up, we would just go out and go to parties and you meet somebody through a friend of a friend and you sit down
Right.
and you have a conversation.
Yeah.
Now it's just instantaneous, swiping here, swiping there. I don't like it, and
Yeah.
I can imagine it's pretty difficult. And so, with my daughter anyway, one of the things I'm trying to do, just like you said, is I am trying to expose her to different things, go to different places, find, pay attention to what it is she likes to do. She's really into art right now. So taking her, to the art museum, or taking her
Right.
to other places where people are gathering that have the same interests, because that really is
Yeah.
how you meet people and how you connect
Hmm.
with people beyond the physical, and you got to
Oh
kind
yeah.
of break that barrier. But I think for the younger people and anybody that's out there now, you have to be you have to be strong in yourself, because I think that's where people get in trouble, when they're not sure of who they are, or they're not sure of where they belong. They don't have a supportive family. They don't have a close network of friends.
Yeah.
Really easy to get going down a dark path, because you see everybody's highlight reel, you don't see
Yep.
the reality of life, and that's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
That is really hard, and in a lot of young people's standpoints or viewpoints, what they see in the reels they think is real. you know
Yeah.
or the picture is real. I mean, these days we have filters. These days people are wanting to put their best foot forward as far as
Mhm.
having the best picture of themselves out there. Is that how
Right.
they look every day? Maybe not. I don't know. But um even young girls and boys, okay, who may not appear to have any physical differences, um, can feel or make themselves feel a deep sense of shame
Hmm.
because of all the glamorous pictures in reels of people in social media.
Sure.
And it can cause a lot of anxiety and stress within them as they're scrolling.
Yeah.
And one thing I appreciate that you brought up, Vicky, is you brought up clarity and perspective. And what I mean by that is um, you also talked about how social media can be leveraged for good,
Hmm.
can be leveraged to, for people cleft affected to see others out there, to belong to a part of a community
Hmm.
in those, who are cleft affected, and share stories and ask questions and just, be unapologetically a part of that group, and know that, hey, I'm not the only one going through this, and build that sense of self, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so in the right hands, I think, social media, while it does cause all those other things we talked about, it's an opportunity to build community and for people to connect with people, you know, like them,
Yeah.
regardless of whatever it is, color,
Hmm.
ethnicity, whatever. So,
Yep.
yeah, thank you for that clarity.
Sure.
For sure. Now, I want to kind of shift gears into the great work, okay, that you are doing at Dragonfly Paradigm.
Hmm.
Now, one thing I find completely fascinating is not only are you working with the cleft affected children, okay, but also the parents,
Hmm.
and coaching and navigating through them through how they guide their child, who is cleft affected. So, and I apologize in advance if I'm stating the obvious, but I just want to know from you, and if you have any additional um, thoughts on this. Um, from what I read on your website, it looks like the way the parents respond to supporting their child in this who's cleft affected, plays a big part in the mindset that the child will have about themselves and the environment around them going into the future.
Hmm.
That's what it seems like to me as far as what I read. And I want to make sure, number one, I'm perceiving it right. And number two, if you had any additional thoughts on that.
Sure. Yeah. No, you've got it 100%. That really is my feeling, not just, based
Hmm.
on my own experience, because that's what my parents did for me, but just,
Hmm.
general parenting principles that you see out there,
Hmm.
all over. Uh, it really comes down to how the parents, caregivers, immediate close family
Hmm.
interact, respond to, address, and support their child. Because let me tell you, your kids are watching exactly what you do. And
Hmm.
one of the things when I was growing up, my parents were very open about my cleft, and if people would ask about it, they would answer and give information about my surgeries, whatever it might have been. And while I look on that as generally positive, they certainly weren't hiding from it, or giving off kind of the appearance of like they were ashamed or anything like that. They were very willing to talk about it. But one of the things that came as kind of a downside of that was I ended up feeling that I had to be just as honest and open with everyone whenever I was asked, even if I didn't want to. And I'm a pretty like closed person when it comes to personal stuff. I'm really not one that's out there saying everything about, all my feelings and thoughts and stuff like that. I'm a pretty private person. And so that was really kind of an issue for me that I only realized, as I got a little bit older. Why didn't I want to talk about it all the time? Because I wasn't comfortable. But when anybody would ask me, I would feel that I had to say something, and not really knowing that I had the power to say, not up for talking about that today. Thanks, though. Just something even as simple as that. And it's all about boundaries, and I think so much is certainly in the cleft community. I'm not sure about, others, perhaps in the, neurodivergent as well. But a lot of parents feel that in order to, either address their child's cleft or deal with like bullying or something like that is educate. We're going to educate the community. We're going to tell them all about it. That's fine. But at some point you have to look at, you need to protect your child. You need to think about them first.
Yes.
And when they get old enough, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, Vickie, do you feel like talking about that today? Or even asking them, how do you want to talk about it? Do you like when I talk about it? Your kid is their own person, and I, even as a parent myself, I'm guilty of this. My daughter's 10. It's like, she's just a little, little mini me. I'm just going to make her do all this stuff because we need to get stuff done.
Yeah.
She's her own human being. She has her own emotions and thoughts about things. And if we can get to where we can talk about it, and I have to be able to respect it and accept it, then it changes and enriches that relationship and dynamic. But that really is one of the things that I preach a lot about, is just, you have to acknowledge that it's the child's journey. It's the child's cleft. My mom didn't have a cleft. I did.
Right.
She was my caregiver, and she was doing all the stuff that parents have to deal with, which is in and of itself its own emotional journey, 100%.
Right.
But we like to say it that, our journeys are parallel. They're not identical. She has her own experiences, but I'm the one living with it, undergoing the surgeries, undergoing the bullying, the questions, the comments. So it has to be kind of like she's my supporter, right? In order to navigate through. So that's kind of, that's my soapbox. That's what I really want people to know is you have to view them as their own people and do whatever you can do to ensure that they know how to best support themselves, because we can't do it for them. No matter how much we want to, we can't solve all the problems and fix all the hurt. We have to give them the skills they need in order to do it for themselves.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And as parents, I mean, whether you have a cleft-affected child or not, I mean, these are pretty fundamentals of parenting and in giving them the tools and skills to to rely on themselves, especially as they get older, right? And to make them aware that they do have the power to choose. They're not obligated to answer someone's question if they don't want to, and that's and by the way, that was a great soapbox. Okay, so I mean, I love that, because that's word to the wise, right? It's word to the wise, and I can't help but think that is part of what you coach with your clients, with your parents of the cleft-affected children, right?
Yeah, I mean, life is hard. It doesn't matter if you have a visible difference or not. Life is hard, and once you can kind of, accept that and deal with it and understand that things are going to be challenging at times, it just makes it so much easier. I think a lot of times too, you can kind of start talking about toxic positivity and everything's fine, everything's great,
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not, like sometimes It is not.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of life. And that's what I'm hoping to be able to give, the parents that I work with. And I'm looking now to kind of expand my niche a bit just to parents of school age kids, because like you said, these experiences, bullying, fitting in, feeling left out, it's not only for people that have visible differences. We're human beings. We all feel that.
Yeah.
And these
Yeah.
are, skills and strategies that I've developed that I feel are applicable to, well, everybody. And so trying to share that with more people, because I just want kids to be able to learn earlier what I did when I was much older. It's like, if I can just help somebody develop some of these skills when they're 10, 11, 12, and not wait till they're in their 20s where it's like, oh, a lot more
Yeah.
trauma can happen. So that's the
Yeah.
mission.
Yeah, and a great mission it is, Vickie. And I think we've come full circle in this, because earlier in our conversation we were talking about your own personal perception when being approached with a question. You got tired of answering the question. You were very defensive, and you could respond back, coming in pretty hot, as they say,
Yeah.
and that you could say some words that hurt.
Yeah.
And then talking about having the discernment between someone who is just asking to ridicule or mock versus someone who's genuinely curious. and
Mm-hmm.
and then fast forward to just a few minutes ago, you put the capstone on it in a very beautiful way by saying, we should teach our children, if somebody asks, hey, do you want to talk about this? Or, hey, can you explain why this looks this way, or how you got this way? And if they don't want to talk about it, they don't want to talk about it. Don't have to talk about it, right?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So I think we've come full circle in that, and I appreciate you offering that clarity and distinction between those, right? Because there's a, and how'd you say it? You said the toxic positivity,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, one thing, in my opinion, along the lines of toxic positivity, Vickie, I believe, is someone who's nice versus someone who's kind.
Uh,
Okay.
uh-huh.
And this is just my opinion, but someone who's nice is the people pleaser, right? They're the ones who, even though deep below, it pains them to have to answer the same question to another person who's
Mm-hmm.
asking it, but they don't want to disappoint them, so they'll answer. Um, and then you have the person who is kind, where you can be kind to that person, and in a kind way respectfully decline to answer,
Right.
right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
So you teach kindness. um and I think that's beautiful, because it, number one, it empowers children. Number two, it lets them know that it's okay to say no,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
And that, to me, that just builds some confidence and reassurance within them in who they are. And again, I got to commend you for this, and this community that you've put together, Vickie. I've only scratched the surface in what I saw on your website, but I certainly would love to learn more. I don't have anyone in my immediate family who is who is cleft affected, but I have an interest in these things, and I have an interest in community, and I hope I can read more stories of transformation and success, from someone who may have been, say, disenchanted from what they experienced,
Yeah.
to the community they are part of today.
Mhm. For sure. Yeah. No, it's
Yeah,
been
yeah,
wonderful.
100%. So, Uh, Vickie, I would love to know, um, what is the one absolute major takeaway? I know there's multiple takeaways, but what is the one major takeaway that you would want your clients to get out of Dragonfly Paradigm?
Ooh. Um,
If you can sum it up in a sentence or two, what would that be?
I would just want them to know that they are fully capable of
Mhm.
raising a child with a cleft that will become a resilient, strong, competent person of society, that we really are no different than anybody else. We do have some additional challenges, but they really are able to be mitigated with love, with acceptance, and even, maybe most important, honesty.
Yes.
Telling the truth about life in general is a gift that not a lot of kids get, and not a lot of families actually do. So I think, those are kind of the key points there, that I want people to know.
Love it. Love it. And it's well received. As soon as you said that, I felt that 100%. Yes, you could raise your children to be quite capable, self-respect, self-confident, and have the security in who they are. And the parents are capable of doing this as well and guiding them. So, Vickie Stolle, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'd love to know, and I'd love for the listeners to know, how can they connect with you, follow you, learn more about the great work you're doing?
Sure. The easiest way is just through my website, dragonflyparadigm.com. It's got links to all the things there, but I am on all the social media platforms, even TikTok. I'm giving it a try. But
give it a try, yeah.
It's all under Dragonfly Paradigm, so you can just search that. It'll come up, and on the website there are ways to email me and that kind of stuff. So keep it simple.
Gotcha. I hear you. Dragonfly Paradigm on all the social mediums. That keeps it very simple. And like you, I'm of a different generation, so I'm trying to warm up to TikTok. We'll see a little more to come. Stay tuned. But why not try it, right? So
that's right.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. We're going to have your social media handles and the dragonflyparadigm.com web address in the episode show notes, so the listeners can click on those links, connect with you, follow you, learn more about you while listening to this wonderful conversation. Vickie, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. I really, really appreciate it, and hope we can stay in touch and get you back here at a future date.
You bet. Thank you so much, Aubrey. I appreciate the opportunity. And like you said, I think we're kindred spirits. We could talk for hours, probably just about anything. So I'm looking forward to it.
I totally agree. We surely can, no doubt. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening. And look, as always, we want our listeners to know that when dealing with life struggles, you're never alone, and there's always hope. Please share this show with someone you think needs inspiration and support. We're all on this journey of life, and it sure feels good having you on the road with me. Thanks again for listening. We'll chat again soon. We really hope you enjoyed this episode of The Road to Rediscovery. We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email at roadtorediscoverypodcast@gmail.com and leave us any questions or comments you may have.